We drink tequila. We talk. Welcome to Team Tequila Talks.
Here we go, our first remote episode. Everybody, welcome to Team Tequila Talks. And if you're watching this visually, you'll notice that we are not in our normal studio. I have headed to Atlanta, and Sandra Dean out here, co-host Sherry Gonzalez, dialing in from LA. And we're going to give this whole remote thing a go with our special guest. We have my friend and tequila buddy, Milk from producing team Milk Sizz. They are Grammy and Latin Grammy award-winning producers and songwriters and tequila enthusiasts.
Love tequila. Thank you for having me. This is amazing.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here joining us.
Wait, I have a question. Can we add tequila?
Tequila. So
Yes.
Sherry likes to make up words.
I do too.
That's one that she made up, and we're rolling with it here at Team Tequila Talks. We are pulling out the fancy pants cards today. We're doing a sipper. We like to mix it up sometimes here with cocktails versus sippers, and usually when we're doing a sipper, we like to get a little fancy.
Yes.
I reached out to Milk and said, hey, you're coming on our show. What are we drinking? And this girl loves Dragones. I've seen her yank it out of her bag before in public places. And
I still do that every week.
And you know what? I fully support it. So here we are. We've got some Dragones, and we start off every Team Tequila Talks with a cheers. That's
nice.
a pretty hearty pour for you there. That's okay. Probably going to be here for a solid 45 minutes, so let's go for it. Cheers. Cheers in LA, Miss Sherry on. Looks like you've got something interesting over there.
I love that. That blood orange.
Yes, and I squeezed a little bit of it up in my cup.
Okay, so that's, you know what, interesting point. We're going to get into this here, and kind of the whole point of the episode. But on that topic, I have some oranges here because here at Team Tequila Talks, we usually steer clear of limes because it's a bit biting. And we've gone into previous episodes. We've talked about how, you know, we don't want to cancel the tequila flavors because we drink nice tequilas.
Yes.
Limes are okay if you're
You're trying to drink margaritas, right?
Well, right, as a margarita base, etc. But more or less, we like to elevate the tequila sipping experience. We use grapefruits a lot. I don't happen to have any here today, but we do use grapefruits a lot. Oranges, and then sometimes we get into other mixers. I had some oranges, and funny enough, Milk comes in and says,
I'm allergic to oranges. Yes.
Oh, that is
which
the
I
most...
don't know if I've ever...
I mean, so you drink
kind of
your
a random
tequila.
allergy, but you're allergic to what you're allergic to. I've never heard of anybody that was allergic to oranges.
Yeah, but...
So I didn't have backup grapefruits.
But that's okay.
Well, isn't grapefruit in the orange family?
So it's just orange. It's not any other citrus. It's not lemon. It's not lime. It's not grapefruit. It's no other citrus. It's literally just the oranges. So anything in that orange family. So the blood oranges, as beautiful as they are, I can't really do the juice too heavy, even though it's a modification. So some days it's good. You know how long it took me to learn that I was actually allergic to it? Like, I'm a big brunch girl. And I went and I would do brunch all the time and, you know, get mimosas and be sick immediately following.
You can be
just
in the vicinity
brunch.
of oranges, right?
Of course.
You just
Oh
can't
no,
eat
it's
them?
not. It's no anaphylexic. It's all like
Just making
internal
sure, as I'm
digestional.
sitting here biting an orange, I'm so sorry. I probably should have asked that
it's
first.
good. No, it's good. It's all internal gastrointestinal. So it's nothing that happens outside. It's just that once it goes in, it eventually needs to find its way out, and it's not great for anybody. So I don't do it.
I feel like
sesame seeds.
right. I feel like women suffer in silence, and I think if you're going to go to a brunch and have mimosas, you're not going to think it's the mimosa. It's like the eggs.
It wasn't until the test came back.
A mimosa
The test
would never
came back,
do this to me.
and I was looking at the list. I said, "You wouldn't you know it? Onions and oranges." So, like the yellow onions and the red onions, and I'm just like, for real, dude? Like, seriously? Like, this is what I'm allergic to? So, anyway.
Now we know.
It's a thing. It's a whole thing.
So we pulled a page from the Team Tequila handbook, and I actually had some pineapple, turmeric, black pepper shots with a little lemon juice in my fridge.
Yes.
We've talked about taking those daily shots before, which I do regardless of where I am, whether it be in Los Angeles or Atlanta or anywhere else I may be. I find it somewhere.
Yes.
There's a great juicery around the corner here, and I get some local fresh press stuff. And I have it in the fridge, and it turns out it makes an excellent chaser.
An amazing chaser.
So this is what the chaser, the sipper that Milk has for us. We are drinking Casa Dragones.
Dragones.
The house of the dragon.
Dragons.
Yes.
Like cojones, but dragones.
Right, but dragones.
So this is, as I mentioned, I've seen Milk drink this before. This is kind of her go-to tequila, and we have previewed Casa Dragones on the show before, and just as a nice revisit, if you notice that every single bottle is hand labeled, batch made, and hand numbered and signed. There's a BP on here, approved by BP. I don't know who BP is, but he's got a pretty good job if he gets to sit around and sip tequila and say yes or no, press the red button or the green button.
I really love that about these brands that are very intentional about everyone signing in signature blends and like stuff. That stuff is important because growers and the farmers, all those people matter throughout this process. So you don't just get to just say, oh, it's I call them, black label. Just black label everything and say, oh, no, this is something I created and I came up with. It's like, no, there's a process to this. Yes. Someone had to do each step, So I love that. I love companies that support the entire process and making sure that their team gets recognized and everybody shines.
Well, and that's one of the things that we noticed when we were looking into the history of Casa Dragones is they are very meticulous about their entire process. And what I like is that they even extend it to after they've handed it off to the consumer because they are one of the most sustainable brands of tequila. So they use a very, very modern process. There's a lot of very traditional tequila companies, and we love those too.
Of course.
Absolutely. But Casa Dragones specifically, they use a very, very modern distillation process. They don't oak this tequila at all. They don't age it. It's not sitting there in barrels. And they're using water from 70 feet below a volcano.
Oh, wow.
So they've got all these minerals coming through from the volcano, and this water pools in an underground well, and it collects all of these minerals. We're talking about chromium, selenite, magnesium, potassium, and all of these micronutrients that your body needs that aren't even on the back of a nutrition label when you're looking at it.
You're never going to see it there.
I think they should start labeling tequila with all of their ingredients. Like if you're going to have all these minerals, you can be a college kid and care about minerals. Like, oh, I'll buy that bottle instead of that bottle because at least it has minerals in it.
Yeah.
Well, minerals are important because they are the crucial factor in dehydration. So you can drink all the water in the world, but if you're drinking distilled water, it's going to go right through you and your body is not holding on to any of that hydration. Yeah. So you've got to make sure that you're balancing out the water intake with proper minerals. And a lot of times when you're drinking, especially if you're drinking low quality liquors or non-tequilas, it can really flush out a lot of those minerals from your body, which is what's going to give you headaches, cramps, even like if you go on a walk the next day and you say, oh, my foot's cramping up.
Right, you can't figure out why. You're like, did I catch a Charlie horse and I've only been walking for like 2 minutes? And you're trying to figure out why. I tell people that's why I primarily drink tequila, because you just cannot escape the benefits, right? Like I've just started a new program, a weight loss program, which I'm over all of them. But the biggest thing was I was like, the only thing, and you know how I know you're legit or you're not legit is if you're not a legit program is when you're trying to say, oh, you have to cut out everything, right? You have to cut out all alcohol. You have to do this. And then I just look at them and I say, so I know we aren't going to be friends, because it's not the fact that it's a problem about the drinking. It's the fact that you won't even recognize or identify. You believe the exclusionist doesn't create sustainability in general, right? Of any program. If you exclude all the things and you're trying to say, okay, you can't do this and you can never do it. When that person falls off program, it's usually because of something that you had a hard stop and that you didn't even give them any grace and were able to say, okay, well, if you do it this way or if you do it this way, it's like, okay, we recommend these many ounces, even if you're doing tequila or anything like that. And that's what the new program was kind of like mentioning to me. And I was like, okay, I'll see what we get. I'll stay tuned. I don't know.
Well, it's not sustainable, right? When you are long-term cutting everything out, it might work for a couple of weeks or even a month. There's a reason even the whole 30 diet is 30 days, because they say just do the 30 days, reset your system, and then figure out what's bothering you.
Right.
So if you're cutting out all of these things and then all of a sudden something is bugging you, you know what it is. You know what's setting you off.
You get
know?
highly allergic right away when it comes back into your system because you've removed everything.
Yep.
So I appreciate all of those programs.
Sure. We always preach balance here at Team Tequila Talks. We love a good sweat and a good detox to retox. We put in all of the supplements, we get our workouts in, and then we happy hour.
Okay, so we're friends, all of us now?
Yes.
This is
I
my
mean,
life.
people always ask me, like, nutrition plus fun plus weight plus health. And I think we do a good balance here of all of those. I think we care deeply about the tequila we sip and what we put in our body, and also exercise and all that good stuff. So I do appreciate that about you, that you appreciate that.
Yeah, listen, I'm team all those pillars, because as wives, as mothers, as creatives, you have to do and build things into your life that are sustainable. And if you don't, you end up burning out. And so I preach that from every corner of the world, if I can, of, how do you get long-term success? And we tell people it's the balance. It's the balance of, okay, yes, I might be doing this, but on this day I'm not doing this. It's the moderation. It's creating that, that focal point of saying, okay, this is my hard stop. These are my boundaries, and that all that is okay. And being able to express that is, it's critical.
Are you a Libra, or are you just a true artist?
I'm a Cancer.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
well, balance
my
is,
gosh.
I feel like artists do that too. I mean, maybe not every artist, but I feel like that is something that we see a lot in the creative world, is people preach balance. And it's about, maybe you have like a crazy 16-hour day on set or in the studio, but then you go take a couple days off and just relax with your family.
Right, or just talk to no one. I know certain singers
reset.
that we get in the studio and they're like, so, I was singing for I had a show to prepare for, so after that show, everybody's preparing for the Grammy, so it's like after that, I am not speaking to another soul for 3 days. I have a friend who literally does that all the time. She'll just go MIA, and people will be like, hey, I was texting you. She's like, well, I'm not speaking to anyone. I need to reset my brain to go on to the next thing.
Yeah, self-care as creatives is probably a newer thing. I think when we were all on the lockdowns, it was basically
forced.
And then some people got too comfortable with the lockdowns and then couldn't come out of it. Some people were like animals in cages, get me out of it. But I think, yes.
Yeah.
But I think eventually we all thought there's nothing wrong with staying at home and gathering your thoughts and kind of recalibrating.
Right. And also setting your boundaries. I always tell people, balance is about boundaries. if you don't know that, and I think, it is a newer conversation amongst creatives, like you're saying. I absolutely believe that, because I think for years, we're being managed, right? Creatives are absolutely being managed by, agents, and the list goes on. I just call them the suits. So the suits will manage the creatives, and as they manage the creatives, it's more about the deadline. It's more about the work that needs to be completed, whatever that is. And it's but who created the deadline? Who built this timeline? Who did it? Point them out. You built this timeline?
Right.
Move it.
Right. It's all arbitrary, really.
It is.
Right?
What is time, right?
Yeah.
What is time?
On that note, one of the reasons that I thought that you would be particularly suited for our first, my first episode in Atlanta and our first episode remotely, which we're going to have to do sometimes because we lead awesome lives and we're so privileged and lucky to be able to travel and get to travel for work and get to travel for family things and vacation, right? And we're really lucky to get to do that. But we still like to drink tequila. We still like to talk. So here we are. I just got to Atlanta, and I have to say, I had a really hard time finding this tequila and finding good tequilas in general.
Right.
And this is interesting because Sherry and I went to this amazing place in Silver Lake called Barkeeper, and they have they're very eclectic, and they have over 100 brands of agave spirits. And I specifically say, oh yeah, it was. We had to. It took us a while to pick a few because we were like, oh, this one, no, this one, no, this one. So our friends over at Barkeeper in Silver Lake were really amazing because they walked us through some of the options. But the reason they say agave spirits, and we've covered this in previous episodes, is because in order to be a tequila, you have to be from Jalisco and Tequila, Mexico. There's also some mezcals, but we picked up a bottle, which I'm excited to try at some point, of Peruvian agave spirit, and it's supposed to be made in the fashion of a tequila, but it can't be called a tequila because it's from Peru.
Correct.
Sherry was talking some stuff about a rice-based tequila.
Yes.
We haven't gotten there
That's
yet.
Japanese.
I still think that she made that up. Maybe we'll see if we can get our hands on it.
It's a real true fact.
Well, see, I love that because I'm first generation Kenyan, and so we have farms in Kenya, and there's certain parts and certain altitudes where it's mostly like kind of desert like, and I am very attracted to some of my family land that has the ability to grow cacti, because I know that it wouldn't be really nothing to go ahead and put some agave in the ground, and I understand all the rules and legalities about what I can't call a tequila, but it will be.
Is agave native? Because you said cacti are native, but is agave native in Kenya? Because
there's different versions, and there's also export and import things you can do, because they are building different spirit brands out there. There's quite a few, but not, no one's explored that one. Like, they were exploring rum, they're exploring, even the clears and all of that. They're exploring the gins, and they're not exploring tequila in any way, shape, or form. So for me, I'm like,
oh, corner that market, girl. You've got the expertise.
Listen.
You've got the experience.
Yeah, there's different types of agave. Tequila that we drink is 100% blue agave, but there's multiple variations. Like I remember talking to this guy, and he was saying, no, Sotol is the original tequila in Mexico. And I was like, I had never heard of it. I just looked it up last night. Sotol. It is ancient. It is a different agave plant. It's apparently it's like their moonshine. It's like,
so we had learned a little bit at Barkeeper. They were showing us, for example, I think it was there's one of the brands. I'm gonna have to look it up because there were so many. I felt inundated with tequila knowledge.
The Pachuga?
But we did take some notes, and there were a few that had different types within the same brand. There were different types of agave plant. And we always say that here at Team Tequila Talks, we only do 100% agave.
Right.
Now, generally, just because of the nature of tequila, that is a blue agave.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that it always has to be blue.
Right.
So we actually pulled a few different types of agave that we were going to sample in the future. More importantly, to come back to my point, I think that no matter where you are in your city or where you are geographically, you've got to find somebody that knows their shit. Because we walked into Barkeeper and they were so educated.
So versed. They gave you everything that you needed, and you walked away with a bunch of information. I think that was the beauty of being here in Atlanta from a wine perspective. And we were right up the street. We also lived here in this area. And in this area, there was a wine store that's no longer here, but that was our first introduction to wine. Sizz and I's introduction to wine came from like this super knowledgeable sommelier. And we was like, so what's going on? And then right after that, our anniversary, we were like, we need to go to wine country. And then he was like, yeah, but if you go, don't go to this place. He was like, go to Russian River. And he was like, go to Hellsberg and go and do this. And like, he gave us like this whole thing, and it gave us such power when you go places and you feel knowledgeable, right? Like, I spent a lot of time in Mexico, so I was getting my tequila experiences from being in those spaces, and they're like, this isn't tequila. Like, you get a chance to, like I tell people, I said, my education comes from boots on the ground. So I'm there, and they're like, this is not tequila, right? And then they give you the history, and they're like, this is why it's not tequila. This is why it's not tequila. So there's this new song out where this girl's like, what's not Atlanta? And everybody is like, first of all, that is actually Atlanta, and where you were standing is not Atlanta. So let's
Sherry
not do
says
that.
about LA all the time.
I know.
People go to Beverly Hills and they go, oh, this isn't what I expected in LA. And Sherry, an LA native, goes,
Nice,
this is not LA.
I'm
Beverly Hills is not LA.
Beverly Hills.
Where did you go?
Right. You couldn't find, how many stores did you drive to?
I had to call several stores.
Really?
Yes, and I had to go pretty close to Buckhead.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
They had, which 20 minutes away, maybe 20 with traffic, or 15, something like that. I don't know. Atlanta's busy, but it's not necessarily sprawling. It's not
it's
big,
congested.
But it's busy.
It's just congested.
It's got busy energy, but everything is pretty condensed, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree.
So I had to go several neighborhoods up, we'll say that. And I called, and they had one bottle.
That is nuts.
Of Dragones left.
In Buckhead?
Yep.
So that
bottle.
was, I believe also, so Sizz and I moved out of Buckhead in 2020 with the pandemic and everything. So we moved out of Buckhead, but we were essentially here for 8 years. So I believe that if they are missing a Dragone supply, it is because of our true socialization of this bottle in this area, because nobody was drinking Dragones until we started pulling it off of the shelf. We were shipping it during the pandemic because it was a little harder to find here. Our close where we were getting it, they were having supply chain issues, so they weren't able to get it. We were boxing it. Georgia allowed the shipping laws to change, so you could get it from kind of anywhere,
Oh, wait. Georgia has different laws for alcohol than California.
Yes.
Is this? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, every state is state to state, and I find that the southern states. I know that when I grew up in Texas, you couldn't buy liquor after a certain time, before a certain time. You couldn't serve liquor before noon unless it was with food, and liquor stores are separate than where you can buy beer or wine.
All of that
nothing
was
on Sunday
applying
before
to
12.
All of that applied to Georgia. However, we lived through all of that. We socialized through all of that.
Look, I can go pick up my daughter, and some mom has wine or something in her trunk.
Like in a carafe or something like that.
Anywhere in California at any time.
It's not that. They were we were part of that legislation. We had to vote on it. What was the time that you had to get alcohol? And we were like, seriously, this 12:30 thing on Sunday? Well, it is 12:30 now, but you couldn't get alcohol anywhere on Sunday, at all, for years. It wasn't until a couple years ago that you really could, the legislation had changed, and we all had to vote on it, in order to get that. So essentially, if there's a problem finding Dragones, it's because I no longer live in the city in that way, and I am fully responsible for that shortage, and I'm okay with it. But we used to ship it from New York or Jersey, because also it's cheaper. It was cheaper in the other states. They were selling it here for a 20 to 30% markup for the Dragone. It was nuts. We were like, I'm sorry, how much did you say that was? And that's not an añejo. We're talking about the Blanco.
Right.
When we brought those two bottles up there, we were just looking at them like, what was the total? And they're like, oh yeah, with this. I said, even with shipping, this is more.
When I was Googling it, because I was trying to find, and maybe this is a helpful tip for anybody that's listening, I was trying to find Dragones, and what do? You go into Google and you Google Dragones Tequila Atlanta, right? Because maybe someone's got it on their website, or maybe it's going to show you high-end liquor stores in your neighborhood, whatever. That's a good starting point, right? And I noticed that there were several wholesale online websites. So Sherry, you and I are going to have to look into this for sure. But there are some websites that are basically online versions of Costco for liquor stores, and you can get closer to wholesale prices delivered to your door. So I don't know why I'm just now finding out about this.
That was new during the pandemic.
Holy
so all
smokes.
of my
Wait, is that in LA too?
They deliver
anywhere.
It's
and
online.
especially if they allow shipping.
But it takes time. So here's kind of the problem. Is it takes time, because basically we're used to, oh my gosh, we're going to go somewhere, we're going to go to an event, we're going to go to
I need it now.
I need it now. And so you go to Bevmo, or you go to your barkeeper in Silver Lake, or you go to your local spot and you get something fun, or you get I need a gift, I'm going to get a fun gift.
Right. These are always my gifts. I get tequila.
But you're usually not planning ahead,
right.
As in, I need this $300 bottle ahead of time. But I found the Clase Azul Anejo, and it was on this website for $450.
Right.
So you go into a liquor store, it's $1,200.
Exactly.
Which is crazy. And $1,200, we're talking about sustainable earlier. $1,200 is not a sustainable habit.
It's not a sustainable habit. It's just not.
Sherry,
I mean,
do you have money I don't know about?
It's not sustainable, but it might be necessary.
Some money in your floorboards?
No, but it might be
For
necessary.
special occasions, I'm totally with the higher end bottles.
Yeah.
I tell people there's two things. If you ever invite me anywhere, I'm either bringing tequila or I'm bringing Tiffany. So we're talking about weddings and all kinds of other stuff. There's only two things I do: tequila or Tiffany. So it depends on where you fall in my range of friends.
Right. Well, let me remember to invite you to my
to any anniversary, dinner, whatever. Yeah, I got you covered.
Well, we love a fancy guest here at Team Tequila Talks. Speaking of fancy, let's talk about the thing that has been on everybody's social media and mine and happy hour conversation, the slap heard round the world.
Can I get some more tequila?
You may get some more tequila.
Let's get some more tequila going before we have this conversation.
Yeah. Let me pull up my Will Smith notes.
Okay.
Please.
All right. Sherry, pulling up your Will Smith notes, talking about being fancy, the fanciest thing in certainly all of Hollywood. I wouldn't say all of the world, but is there a more notably glam public event than the Oscars? I'm sure somebody's princess's wedding somewhere was in a castle and was maybe more fancy and more star-studded. But when we're talking about the epitome of glam, and you ask probably 100 people on the street, they're going to say the Oscars.
Right. And I just a quick note. A few years ago, we did a lot of the Jamie Foxx stuff that it relates to. And I bring it up because there's both music and acting, right? So that's pertinent to this. So we did Laugh-A-Palooza for him, and that was the first time it was on TV. When the next year, when he won the Grammy for Blame It, he had essentially a Grammy week parties and stuff like that. The Grammy official party that he had at the Conga Room was starkly different than the party that was at the Viceroy, however you say it. The one that was more with the actors and Jake Gyllenhaal's walking around and you got Gerard Butler running around. You got anybody who's ever been with Jamie Foxx at any particular movie for any reason was at that event. It's a different animal. So I would say, as a music person, I would love to say, oh, it's the Grammys. The Grammys is also a very, public stage or stuff like that. However, I feel like as far as fancy goes, I think that the Oscars they've got fancy kind of on lock in that way. So no, to answer your question, there is no currently happening event that is bigger.
I will say, like I said, public event, because I'm sure that some
televised
somewhere.
Yes.
Right. So at the Oscars, for anybody that did not see it or did not see it on social media or anywhere on the internet, Chris Rock was doing a bit of a bit, as comedians do,
right? And
he mentioned Jada Pinkett in his. It wasn't a monologue, I guess, because he wasn't opening, but in his time on stage,
he was presenting. He was presenting
an award.
Right.
And apparently, he has mentioned Jada before, and it's been a problem before. But he mentions a joke about Jada not having hair, and I'm sure most people at this point know that Jada has alopecia, which means that she has a hair loss condition, a medical condition, and Will Smith walked up on stage, and I mean, I kept saying this when it happened. People said he hit him. I go, he bitch slapped him. If I'm gonna pick
say what
name,
it is.
Well, that's what I kept saying. Is everybody said, oh, he hit him or he smacked him, and I go, guys, he bitch slapped him.
It also
That's
depends on the context of who's watching and what level they're at in the world, right? Because every lawyer I spoke to uses assault.
Yes.
Like every lawyer I talk to is like assault.
Bitch slapping is under the umbrella
I'm
of
like,
assault.
hey, no, it's not, but like for local colloquialisms, we're talking like everybody is using different semantics. It all means the same thing.
Right.
Somebody got hit, somebody got hit.
But I think to say bitch slap is probably more accurate than the word assault, even though the definition falls under that, because when you think of assault, you've seen, we've seen videos where someone just mauls someone or just
and then there's an aftermath, and then there's stuff like that. I think that because of the the short-lived or even the timing of everything and how it all kind of like, it was so quick, it was shocking, right? That's what really we're talking about. We're talking about the shocking nature of how it just
and there's different, the same way that there's different categories of larceny or burglary, there are different categories, criminally speaking, of assaults, because I don't know exactly what they are. I'm not a lawyer. We love giving out disclaimers here on Team Tequila Talks. Don't take our medical advice. Don't take our legal advice.
Right, because we are not the experts.
Right. But there is probably like a Class A, Class B, Class C assault. Right. And there's probably a felony, meaning you put someone in the ICU, and there's probably a misdemeanor C, which is you walked up on stage on the Oscars
and I embarrassed you. Right, and I embarrassed you, and that was the end of it, and call it a day.
Right.
There's different variations.
I think the internet went a little nuts with this.
I do
now,
too.
I think it was absolute. I was in a bar, guy, watching this. I was in a bar watching this with subtitles, and all of a sudden the subtitles go out. Rick. Oh my God, I said Rick. I said Rick, my husband's name. Will walks on stage and he smacks him, and we were just kind of sitting there like, this can't be that real. Like, it just can't possibly be that real. It's a bit, but I knew it wasn't a bit because I'm a huge Will Smith fan, probably the biggest Will Smith fan on the planet. Will is a consummate professional. The man will never break or crack. He has a prestige.
Under character,
so you're saying
life.
It's not a bit because he lost his shit.
Because he started cursing.
Not trying to rhyme
he
here.
Started
from the audience.
He started cursing from his seat.
If it was a bit, he wouldn't have done that.
He wouldn't have cursed.
So I see what you're
when
saying.
Chris Rock said, "Oh shit, Will Smith just slapped me," he's
slapped
also
the shit out of me. Right.
a consummate professional, and he knows you can't say shit on live TV with a 30-second delay. So I was like, they both just cursed, like.
Okay, so with the 30-second delay, I found out, I'm watching this in over 100-year-old theater. It was so amazing, little boutique theater in the Garden District. It was so fun, and everyone in there is not really Hollywood, and they keep saying, oh, it's fake, it's fake, it's fake. And I go, you guys, the producer in the van sitting outside of the theater just hit the dump button.
Right, and
because
that's
what they don't know, what a lot of people
tell people what that is?
Okay, it's not
that when you build in a live event, you build up a buffer. You build up anywhere from 10 seconds to maybe a minute. And so it's live, but there's a several second delay, and they do that in case someone gets up and has an excuse where they get up and they have a thank you speech. I don't know why I said excuse. I meant thank you speech. Where they address the audience and they drop a bunch of mother effers.
Right.
Yeah. And so what they can do is they can dump the audio. They can also dump the video in case there's a streaker on stage behind.
Right. Like you just don't know what's going to happen in live TV. So they always build these buffers in. And I think our conversation yesterday really kind of like kicked off my thought process of why most people feel like it's staged, and it's really unfortunate. So I'll start my point of view of the issue is that there was no protection for Will or for Chris.
Where was security? How come no one came up?
No one came up. No one said anything. No one stopped Will. Nobody stopped anybody from this occurring, right?
Well,
and then you televised it. You let it roll. I was like, whoa.
They didn't have to run up on stage and tackle him.
No. But they could
have
also
come up and grabbed his arm and said, "Sir."
But you guys,
with
us.
With the delay, they had several moments they could have done that.
They, at any award show, Grammys, Oscars, Golden Globes, you have actors running up on stage, hugging people, high-fiving people. There's bits all over the place. So I read Will Packers, who was the producer of this year's Oscars, little Hollywood.
I love Will Packer, but still.
I read his interview the other day, and he said it's Chris Rock delivering a joke, and what we see is Will. Great, Will's gonna walk on stage, and it's gonna be two comedians, two actors, and they're gonna be funny. And so as a producer, do you say, get Will off? He's like, I mean, the man has $6.5 billion in box office, okay? You don't stop him. You could stop a great TV moment. So he's like, we were sitting in the room, and he's like, this is going to be excellent. Then it wasn't excellent. Then everyone froze. Everyone froze because I believe,
and it was still rolling.
No.
Like nobody stopped.
No, I think everyone was like,
commercial.
wait, he said there was a minute where he was like, wait, was that? And I think the human condition is wired.
Yeah.
We're all programmed, used to being programmed a little bit, where when these events happen, fun happens. And we're waiting for the fun.
So do you think that I've seen a meme floating around, or not a meme, but I've seen a photo of the incident floating around, and it looks like there's a pad on Chris's cheek. Now, I personally...
It was photoshopped. They just, the Oscars...
I believe it was photoshopped.
Yeah, the Oscars just said that was not an authorized photo. It was photoshopped.
No,
yeah.
I believe it was photoshopped.
Yeah.
I do too. That is floating around, and that's why you can't always trust the internet for validity. You got to do your own research. You got to read your own labels. That's what we like to say here at Team Tequila Talks.
But I think, do you want to...
No, go for it.
I was going to say really quickly, do you want to be this security guard who grabs Will Smith, who appears to just be walking on stage?
I don't want that job.
Do you want to be this?
No, I don't want that job. No, I don't want that job. But being amongst celebrities, as all of us have been constantly, sometimes there is a reeling in effect, right? Sometimes you may not want it, but there is a reeling in effect that does need to happen at times. It could be at a party, it could be amongst friends, it could be anything. And sometimes debates get heated because we're all creatives. Whatever the case is,
and the tequila may
be flowing or not flowing, and you don't know what the situation was or the conversation at the table. I feel like there's too many unknowns for people to make any other judgments versus saying a bad situation happened on both sides, and what we should be taking away from this is the fact that we need to be protecting these people versus waiting for them to have a funny moment,
right,
or a failure moment,
a failure moment. Because that's, to me, I felt like I was so heartbroken just watching it, because I'm seeing two people that, float around their circles, know a lot of people, different things, like you said, big fan, all of those different things. And just watching that moment doesn't give me a side. It gives me just disappointment. It just gives me like, I wish this didn't happen.
And the interesting thing is too, that brings up a really good point. I noticed we're living in really dichotomous times, and we don't really talk a bunch about politics here at Team Tequila Talks. We like to keep it light as we're drinking tequila.
Right,
however, as a broader spiritual perspective, we are living in some very dichotomous times right now. And I noticed going on the internet after that almost everyone was either Team Chris or Team Will. And how about instead we can say, yes, it was inappropriate to make a joke about someone's medical condition when they're right in front of your face and it's on live TV. But also, yes, it was inappropriate to walk on stage and slap someone on live television. Right. Both can be true. You are allowed to not choose a team here. You're allowed to say, this whole event was unfortunate because it never really ends well when we're bringing violence into the picture.
I think it's because we're parents. We can look at it objectively and say, I wouldn't enjoy if that was my daughter, right? I wouldn't enjoy, and I have had my industry run-ins and, very harsh conversations with people in different spaces because of disrespect, right? But my thing is, when the cameras are rolling, that's what they're looking for. That's the story that everybody is waiting for. So that's why I feel the necessary to protect creatives under pressure, right? The need to make sure that even when I'm not at my best self, there's at least a safeguard there to say, you have no idea what kind of pressure I'm under. That event or something like that, like I'm showing up and smiling for the cameras, but I'm dealing with also real life and things that are happening, and it's not okay for you to just dismiss that because I read one of my classmates from Howard was like, I'm not rich enough to have these kind of discussions. And I laughed and I said, but I also said, but see, that's the problem, is because it was there for your enjoyment. So you partaked in it, but now you don't want to be a part of the conversation. When the conversation is, hey, this is unfortunate, it shouldn't have happened, but if we start building in safeguards where we don't attack we start to attack the bigger monster that's facilitating these things and not the creatives that are participating. Right? Because there's a lot of pressure that comes down on us, but nobody is like talking about that. They're like, there's a lot of jokes. There's a lot of things that's been happening. If you've been the butt of the jokes way too many times, you might be set off. It might be one too many.
I read Will Smith's book. If you haven't, and you are any sort of creative, a painter.
That was, Mark Manson helped write that. He's one of my favorite
Well, that book
authors.
is absolutely stunning of an admission for a man of his power to talk about his trauma. And I think that's a lot of people don't like going down that road. And he's very specific about, in many chapters, about the abuse he's taken in this industry and has been movie star Will. And he has to turn it on, and someone disrespects you. Talks about your kids, talks about your wife, and he links all of that back to being a man and a protector. But no, you can't protect. You're the movie star. He talked about his mother's abuse at his father's hand, and as a kid, he never stood up to his dad, and he felt like, here I am repeating my failures as a son, and I'm doing it again to my kids and my wife. And I really think it was a display in my mind, and what I see and what I've read and what I know about Will being in this industry. It was the right sentiment, the wrong action at the wrong time.
Wrong execution.
Because his kids.
Well, and the interesting thing too is, I think that for him it was very humanizing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people forget that these celebrities are not
They
just
actually
talking
tell
heads.
you don't get to be a human. You're managing symptoms. You don't care really about my mental health. You don't care how I'm dealing with my trauma. You don't care what's going on with me for real on both sides, right? Because Chris Rock has probably his own things and things he's going through as well. So he commented and said, or it was put out there. I don't know if he commented because there's a lot
he
of
didn't comment
things.
it yet.
Yeah, and I feel like that's also a misconception, is like, who is talking for these people? There's so many examples. Like, this is just the current example, but we have a history of examples where something wild happened, right? And one side is speaking and a whole nother side is quiet, and then what happens to that other side that's quiet is also often overlooked. Like, you don't know what really happened because you weren't right there. You weren't, even if you had mics, even if you had audio, even if you know what I mean? You're missing some key components of connection here.
Right.
You're missing the fact that when that happened, that triggered this, and everything is a chain reaction. So you're missing how those things came about.
Right. And I think the history of those two, and you know what I did? Me and my husband said, let's pay attention to the people who know Will, who aren't saying a damn thing. His camp, his group of friends are, every interview they went to,
silent.
Questlove. Everyone was like, I can't believe Will Smith ruined Questlove's moment. Quest went to the Vanity Fair party. He was like, oh no, that's big bro. I'm still baby boy. South Philly in the house. Like,
right, because he's South Philly in the house. Does that make sense? Like, I remember my husband was performing with Quest and all of them. These guys are genuine humans, right? What you're trying to do is get a news cycle going. You're looking for sound bites.
Yeah.
Stop looking for sound bites. Look for the humanistic aspect of this, and then let's move on as a culture forward, so that we're not tearing down two black men to decide on whatever platform you think is the best way to do
right.
this.
And I think Will spoke and Will apologized, and I'm a
He
read.
apologized. He released an apology,
and people couldn't believe that people in the room didn't stop it. And I'm like, well, of course you don't, because you've never been on a movie set or anywhere where people don't stop.
And how many people, in a percentage of humans, have been to the Oscars?
Right? We're talking about
I haven't been to the Oscars.
Yeah,
I haven't been to the Oscars, so I'm gonna go with that. I'm percentage.
Yeah, I haven't been. My husband's been, but they were like, I can't believe then they gave the man a standing ovation. And I think what people don't realize.
Well, hold on. I got to jump in right here because I got to clear up one thing for a lot of people who don't know how the Oscars work. And I actually didn't realize, and forgive me if you're listening and you do know this, but just trust me when I say a lot of people do not based on the room that I was in that night. He was not awarded and given the award in the 2 minutes before they presented a trophy backstage.
Because of his behavior.
So a lot of people said, how could they give him the award after he did that? How was he voted over some of the candidates after he did that? those envelopes were signed a week before the show.
And you can't change them.
You cannot
Same thing for the
change
Grammys.
them, which-
If anything wild happens during next week's this Sunday's
Those
Grammys,
are sealed envelopes.
we have already cast our vote. There is nothing you can do. You can feel however you want, but
You
we
can
have already
change your
done
mind.
it. You can change
But
your
that
mind. I
envelope is
can
in the
change my
mail.
mind. It doesn't matter. I've already cast my
That's-
vote and said who I believe
Yeah, that's
in.
a good point because I saw that a lot online. And I also saw how people thought, what a bunch of cowards in that room. And I was watching it online and I was like, oh, wow. Why is everyone a coward now? Like you've never sat back and seen a friend wild the fuck out. And then you've been like.
And didn't do nothing about it. And you were like, okay, so now that I'm out of my shock moment, are you okay? Is there anything that I can fucking do? And that's what I think about, like, Tyler Perry or anybody else who ran up to Will and counseled him in the corner that nobody's talking about, or any of the other things. It's like the moment happened, everybody was like, what the fuck? And then everybody's like, oh shit, like, let me do something. You know what I mean?
Well, you're paralyzed. I mean, you're in the biggest stage on the world. Everyone says, I would have tackled Will and punched him.
You can't believe it.
You don't know.
You wouldn't
You're
have
not in
done
those
anything.
shoes.
Shut up.
You're not in those shoes. And I have said this multiple times. There are 7.5 billion people on this planet, and you don't know. You can say, if I were in that position, I would do this, but you did not walk those shoes to get to that position.
Correct.
And you don't know what you would do,
Right.
because you know what you would do in a vacuum.
Right.
But you
the bubble
don't
that you
know-
created around you.
But you know what? It could be very different because maybe you're surrounded by a bunch of your friends. Maybe you're with your spouse. Maybe you have history with that person and you don't know. We're talking about like a 20-second clip.
That's such a big a word right now. Like the sentiment is you don't know, you can't imagine, right. You can't even, like, this didn't happen to you, so you don't even know how you would respond in the same situation. Stop putting yourself in other people's shoes when you haven't walked in them.
So I want to make this point before we go, but there's a famous saying you don't know what you don't know. And I think people hate not knowing, so they kind of make it up. So what I believe has happened, I've seen a lot of abuse survivors online basically being like, this was triggering for me. Will needs help. So I almost tweeted to this one lady, but I kept my composure. But I was like, no, that's the first sign that you need help. You can't be walking around.
You're triggered. You're triggered. Stop using my moment to be triggered.
You cannot control other people.
Right. And I said, Will Smith.
Despite your best efforts.
And I said, Will Smith smacked Chris Rock. There's only 2 people involved. Kathy Griffin said, the comedian said, oh, now I'm afraid to perform on stage. I'm like, how are you making this about you?
Come on.
How are you making this?
How dare you make this about
narcissism?
You?
And then I think Judd Apatow tweeted a bunch, but then deleted a bunch because obviously it wasn't great, where he said Will Smith could have killed him. And that's very tropey. That's very like an open hand slap. Like,
it takes a lot to kill somebody.
He didn't
with
punch
your
him.
Hands. Is
like,
Will Smith,
like,
is he a Navy SEAL?
I don't
And
know,
we
but
know
y'all watch too many movies. Is what I like to tell people. It's like you watch too many movies. I appreciate the fandom, but
it is the Oscars. On that note, we're gonna cheers a farewell.
Yay!
Milk and Sizz. Check them out on Instagram. Their music speaks for itself. Sharon Gonzalez, Cassandra Gina. This is Team Tequila Talks. Make sure that you like and subscribe and all the things. You know what to do. Cheers.